this should be considered as virtue. It's altruism. But from the Confucian point of view, altruism will have to be rooted in self-understanding. Otherwise, your altruism is superficial. May turn out to be strategic, to enhance your reputation, to extend your power, and so forth. That's fine, but it's not authentic learning as character building. So the self-learning is absolutely critical, but you have to go beyond your egoism. The loving situation of the family is great, but you have to go beyond nepotism and so forth. Let me suggest, in terms of Confucian way as well as life, the cardinal virtue in the Confucian tradition. It's controversial. This is my position. Many people don't agree with it. The cardinal virtue in the Confucian tradition is the Chinese word for ren. Ren actually means benevolence. I prefer to translate it as humanity. What does it mean by humanity? Humanity is sensitivity, is sympathy, is feeling. The idea is our heart and mind is so sensitive, this is typically human, that it's possible for us to imagine anything in the world or in the universe, a distant star or a blade of grass, that is not relevant to the capacity or the potentiality of our heart and mind. Well, I use the word heart and mind because the Chinese word xin, it's both affective and rational or cognitive. It's not just cognitive, but also affective. So we have to combine these two words, mind and heart, to understand what the Chinese xin is. A friend of mine once, of course it's been translated as heart-mind or heart and mind. And a friend of mine who's in Western philosophy, he said, Wei-ming, you really have to make up your mind. What do you mean? Whether it's heart or mind. I said, sorry, it's both cognitive, affective. So we have to be both. Now this idea of heart and mind is a defining characteristics of the human capacity or human potentiality for ren, or for humanity. If our heart and mind become so paralyzed in such a way we cannot feel anything outside of our world, then you are if you are not physically dead, you are spiritually and emotionally dead. In the modern world, we are faced all kinds of dehumanizing forces. So often we are paralyzed, different degrees. But that kind of paralysis is understandable. Every human being in this sense cannot be fully encompassed in the world. That's understandable. But in terms of potentiality, there's no argument that anyone who is alive, whose heart is open, can have a connection. I'm not saying we can embody everything, have a connection with anything, distant star, anything you're aware of becomes connected with your heart and mind. So the first feature of this great cardinal virtue is sensitivity, is empathy, emotion, empathy, sympathy, or using the Buddhist idea of compassion. One important feature of this cardinal idea is that it is linked to all other Confucian virtues. Linked in the following sense. If you have ritual, this is another very important, some scholars in the United States in particular consider that's probably the most important cardinal virtue in the Confucian tradition. Ritual is not a good translation, it's li. And this notion has been translated by some scholars as civility, civilized way of doing things. Some people believe that civility is the most cardinal, the most important virtue in the Confucian tradition. But I disagree. To have civility without humanity is not possible. To have humanity without civility is possible, and civility degenerates into a kind of formalism. You interact with people formalistically, but you don't feel it. This is a beautiful description. Someone goes to a funeral, and he observes all the rituals in minute detail, doesn't make any mistake. The other one shows up and does not know how to do properly the ritual. But the first one has no feeling. His performance is constant. But the second one, even though he bumped in, he didn't know this ritual, but he feel extremely sad. So Confucius, the second one, is more humane. Now, this is easily understandable. So humanity without civility is not possible. No. Civility without humanity is not possible. But if humanity is absent in the civility, then civility becomes formless. Courage without humanity will degenerate into a certain kind of bravery, sometimes very brutal aggressiveness, or male chauvinistic aggressiveness. So you're talking about courage. Courage is a value, but courage is humane, whereas bravery may not be. If you know the importance of legality, that the rules of game based upon law, if you know that, well, that's terrific. But legality without humanity would be very harsh. The heartless way of dealing with the world. If you violate this, you'll be arrested. There's no excuse. But real, true legality, true spirit of the law must have humanity as an integral part of it. So it's possible for you to find many other kinds of virtue and see the connection between these virtues and the idea of humanity I just described. So one thing is that all the other virtues will have to be informed by humanity. At the same time, all the other virtues can enrich the idea of humanity. So the person who is humane is courageous. The person who is humane is law-abiding. The person who is humane is civil, and so forth. Then you have both the overall virtue and at the same time a virtue that can be enhanced and expanded by all other virtues. In this sense, some people characterize the Confucian ethics as virtue ethics. This is the Greek notion, Aristotelian, Aristotle. That these virtues I mentioned, like courage, like civility, like ritual, like trust, all these values will have to be internalized through learning. So they become part of our character, part of our world. So we become a virtuous person because we've acquired through internalization some of these virtues. We become courageous, that's a virtue. The virtue is not born with, it has to be internal. So virtue ethics is certainly compatible with Confucian ethics, but I don't think virtue ethics describe the real strength of the Confucian approach. So some people use Max Weber's notion about Confucian ethics as an ethics of responsibility. In other words, a ruler or someone who's powerful cultivate this ethics because he's not only care for his motivation, Kantian ethics puts all the emphasis on motivation. If your motivation is right, you become, this is autonomous morality. But from the Confucian point of view, for example, if a ruler, with all the good intention, formulate a policy that turned out to be disastrous for the people, he has to be responsible. So it's a consequentialist. What you've done, your acts, consequences, you have to be responsible. But I think perhaps more important than is Confucian ethics is the care ethics. The ethic, we use the word concern, but care ethics. Let me conclude with one statement. Next week I want to expand that notion. That there are 4 dimensions to Confucian ethics that will have to be recognized first and then integrated if possible. One is self. No question about that, learning for the sake of the self. Self involves the body, the heart and mind, with the soul and spirit. The second one is community, a community of trust, or fiduciary community, I call it. The third one we didn't get a chance to talk about, but you should keep that in mind, is nature. And the fourth one, even more difficult to comprehend, but absolutely important for Confucian ethics, is heaven.